Okay, this is not exactly a, a DIY video. Just going to document some of this. I'm not going to go through the whole process because it's too much work to film and try to do it at the same time. Mostly, I just have to remove these clips here. Got 1, 2 left. There's 8 total, just to get this plastic guard off. I'm about to do that, and then go to the next step. Alright, so that is removed, and on to the next step. That's what it looks like with it off. Okay, the next stage is a little more complicated. There's a screw. I don't know if I can see it with the headlight. There we go. It's that screw right there. That's connecting the bumper to the fender well. It's the only one there, so there's only one to take out there. But same type of clips that I have here. These, you can see that there's a notch on each side. That's so you can get a flathead screwdriver underneath there and pop them out. There's a bunch of these on the underside of the bumper. I'm not going to crawl into the car with the camera to show you, but trust me, there's a bunch underneath. Now, most of the time people take that off. They just get under the car and unclip them. I actually bought jack stands so I can theoretically jack up the car on both sides and make access to those clips a little bit easier. I may just get down on my back and try it without doing that, mostly because when I do remove this bumper, these fog lights here are still going to be wired to the car, and the wire connecting them is short, so I don't want to accidentally rip the bumper off and rip those cords out. If the car is elevated too high, when I set the bumper down, it could pull those out. So I'm going to try just going underneath. Let me sweep up some of the dirt there for a second. Go underneath and try to unclip those on my own without jacking it up. Jack stands were cheap and can use them for other things, but if I don't have to do that, I'm probably going to avoid it. So I will restart the video after I've gotten that stage taken care of. Alright, so I opted to go with the jack stands. It was a little difficult getting to that clip without breaking it, and I needed a better view and a little more access. Of course, after 3 pretty hard days at the gym, having to manually jack up both sides of the car high enough to get the jack stand under, let's just put it this way, my back and shoulders will not be speaking to me tomorrow. So note to self, for future bulb changes, it might be worth investing in a small powered lift just to get it up onto the jacks in the garage. That's definitely a good thing to have in the car during a flat tire on the side of the road, but where you got electricity in the garage, you can get a powered one and save yourself a little sweat and toil. Alright, so now I'm going to go back under and try to get those clips out. Alright, so I just wanted to show you something. Now, this is all, of course, completely unique to my car. So these little clips that I'm trying to get out, kind of hard to see. I'm trying to get some light on it. Right there. You see that center section right here? That has to pop out before you can pull it. And it's a very soft plastic. Very easy for the screwdriver to break it. I noticed there should be a total of 10 clips and I'm missing a few. So I'm guessing the last time my mechanic popped off my bumper, they probably broke a couple of the clips. Which I read or saw online is definitely a problem when you're doing this. You have to be very careful. So I would recommend using a wider head screwdriver rather than a narrow one, because the narrow one's more likely to break the plastic. Also, you can see all this water. Doing this after it rained has been fun, because as I pull these out, it drips water all over me as I'm doing it. So, you know, doing in sunny, dry conditions would obviously be more ideal, but I need this done now, so I'm doing it now. Okay, so it's been a few minutes. I did manage to get all the clips off. I had 10 underside. These were all along the front of the bumper. These were 2 in the back, and those are the fender screws. They really were a little bit challenging to get off. As you can see, if I can get that in focus. Come on, focus. Yeah, well, basically you can see kind of how I chewed up that plastic. There was kind of no way around it. Once you do get that piece popped up, though, they do tend to come out a lot easier. I guess it's good that they don't come out too easy, because you don't want to be going over bumps and having all the clips on your bumper fall out. Again, this is only if you have the Acura. That's the YouTube video I'm actually following. So, but it's step by step, so I'm trying to make sure I've got all the clips out. Actually, I'm going to go underneath the car one more time and really make sure that I've gotten all those clips off before I start popping off that front bumper. Woo! Okay. The bumper is effectively off, and the very thing I was worried about with the jack stands and the bumper coming out too low were those fog lights. Although I managed to catch the bumper as I pulled it, so it didn't hit the ground, and I've got it propped up on that stool right now. One thing the videos didn't show that would have been really handy is I had this really tiny screwdriver, so the clips, I don't know if you can even see them. Yeah, you can. So these clips, if I kind of focus, yeah, those are the ones that you don't want to break, and they were the ones that really were holding the bumper on. But when I was able to get the screwdriver in, maybe under here is a little bit better. Yeah, I was able to get the screwdriver in here, wedged it, and just give it a little bit of leverage, and that allowed me to pop the bumper right off. Kind of surprised me how easy it came off once I did that. So most of the people in the videos were just kind of giving it a yank and pulling it off, which is how I got off the other side. But boy, you're worried about breaking those clips, because you really need these to stay not broken so you can get your bumper back on. So once you can get access to them, and a really tiny screwdriver like this did the job, you're able to leverage it up and just pull it off. But like I said, with the jack stand, the bumper does want to go to the ground, so now I have to just basically disconnect those fog lights so I can pull the bumper away. You may get a kick out of this. He did use a screwdriver.
Alright, so as you can see, there are these clips here that you really don't want to break.
Did I not just say that?
If you saw, well, you guys just did see what I did. Take a very thin flathead and try and wedge it here to release this clip that goes all the way over there.
Yep.
And it hooks into the bumper.
Okay, so I've got the bumper completely removed. You don't necessarily have to do that to get the headlight out, but there's a screw underneath. There's 3 screws holding in the headlights. My phone's charging right now, so I can't walk over there, but I'll show you in a bit that you need to get underneath, and it's much easier with that bumper out of the way. So I did end up removing the fog lights. You might be able to see them, that little green end right there. It's just a clip, which is nice. It just snaps off, so that was an easy remove, and the bumper is across the garage. So, you know, if this video is really contributing to my manliness score, I could lie about the motorcycles, but everybody knows those aren't mine. In fact, one of those motorcycles belongs to my girlfriend. That's right. My girlfriend rides a motorcycle, and I have no idea how. Anyways, back to the car. So, got to disconnect the battery, because getting electrocuted doing this would kind of suck. So I'm going to disconnect just the negative lead. That should be enough, and then I'll go on to getting the eye lens, the headlamp, out. Okay, so a couple of cool things. So your 3 screws on the headlamp are 10 millimeter socket, and like I said, there's one underneath. I wouldn't be able to show you that. One on top and one on the side. I've already loosened these so I can just take them off with my hands. Kind of cool thing. The bolts on the lead for the battery, the negative lead, are also 10 millimeter. So according to a friend of mine who does a lot of work on motorcycles, that's his bike, he says the majority of the bolts in engine and mechanics are 10 millimeter for that reason. It makes it simple. The same tool can just unlock and undo everything. So that was convenient. Didn't have to hunt around for the right socket tip to disconnect the battery. So now that I've safely done that, I can get to removing the lens. Oh, yeah, and the video pointed out something very interesting. There was one more screw that I needed to remove, which is good that I watched a few more minutes before I tried it, so I didn't just try to rip that out. Another thing that's might be different on this is the 2011 TSX, is this little notch right here, because you'll notice if the light's loose, but when I wiggle it, you can see that piece moving, which means I'm going to have to somewhat elevate this bit of metal just to slide the lens out. Otherwise, I believe that everything that's holding it in is removed, so now it's just a matter of pulling it out. Got to do that carefully because the wires are still attached, and I definitely don't want to rip those out. So a little bit of discovery. So the light lens is off. Couple of things. Probably already know this if you've ever really looked at a car, but that's your actual bumper. That metal thing, not the big plastic thing that goes over the front and makes it look pretty, but that big piece of metal, which is covered by nothing but this is a piece of styrofoam covering over it. Here is a really good look at those bumper clips. That's actually the piece of plastic that's attached to the lens. Oops, sorry. If you look at this one, that little piece of plastic is actually screwed onto the headlight lens. That's how the bumper clips onto the car. So I actually may have removed one more screw than necessary, the one right there, which is attached as this to the lens. Not a big deal. This all would have just come out as one piece, but I'll probably put it back on before I put the lens back in. And the bumper provides a nice little place to set the lens down because, as you can see, all the wires are still attached. And that's my main light. That's the one I can get to without taking the bumper off, but that's not the one that burnt out. The one that I need is inside this cylinder right here. It's the HID right there, and that's why the only way to get to it is from the back here and by taking the bumper off the car. 2011 Acura TSX. Keep that in mind if you ever pick up a used one. Yeah, this is definitely not a complete tutorial because I'm not going step by step, what you really would need to do. But a couple of things. It was advised to wear gloves when handling anything around this bulb because any oils that get on anything in there could cause resistance or disrupt the amount of current that's supposed to go into the bulb, causing a short, so you definitely don't want that. I wasn't able to get in there and pull this out with my fingers in the gloves, which is just a little clip that needs to be removed. I found using a pair of needle nose pliers worked great just for reaching in there and pulling it out. You got to be very gentle because the piece is plastic, so you don't want to crush it. The next step is actually twisting off this metal piece here off the bulb, and that'll expose the bulb, which I'm about to do. But I was going to jump ahead and get through a few of the next steps. Obviously, I can't be filming while I'm doing this, so we'll move on and be back in a moment once I get the bulb out. Okay, actually the new bulb is in there. One thing I was going to suggest, the bulb comes out very easily. It's just removing those clips, and fortunately those clips are hinged, so you don't have to worry about dropping the clip inside the engine. Also, before putting on the cap, I would reattach this the lead line there. Much easier to do with the cap off, and you can do it first before you put the cap back on. A couple other minor suggestions have nothing to do with my car, but if you're feeling hungry, I recommend eating some of your roommate's meat pie. That definitely kept me from getting nauseous while I was doing this. Secondly, I highly recommend playing the musical score from Iron Man 2. Nothing quite so macho as working on your car while listening to, you know, Tony Stark's theme music, so that was a big help. And that's pretty much it. About to put this all back together and have a headlight again. So, contrary to the advice of a coworker, I am opting to actually replace both bulbs at the same time. because if one's just gone, it could mean the other one's about to go, and obviously this is a bit of a labor. I've been at it a while, just taking my time, making sure I'm doing it right. I don't want to have to do this again in a couple of weeks or even a month. So I'm going to swap them both. Rarely do both bulbs go at the exact same time. That's probably a quality control thing between the bulb manufacturer. I bought 2 separate bulbs, but at any rate, I am going to do the other side as well, as long as I've got the bumper off already. One thing to note, I didn't keep the best track of which screws were which, but fortunately, there is a variation. The ones that go on the top, so that those top screws, which are basically the screw here and the screw here, they don't have that little unthreaded segment on the the cylinder of the screw. So that those 4 there are your top screws, and these go in the other holes. So that took some of the mystery out for a minute, because I realized I didn't remember which screws went where, but not really a problem, because there are different screws. And you'll notice right away, if you try to put the top screw, for instance, through the bumper clip guard, it won't reach. It's not long enough. That's why they had to put that unthreaded segment on those other screws. So I'm about to swap out the other headlight and then get this all put back together. And one last thing I would recommend before you put that bumper all the way back on is to make sure that your fog lights and your 2 HIDs are actually working. And in this case they are. Did replace both, so now it's just a matter of clipping the bumper back on and we are done. Okay, so the bumper's back on. A little bit of wrestling, but not too bad. One thing to remember when putting these clips on, you do need to pop up that center section to get them back in. You won't be able to hammer them in otherwise. Put the phone down for just a second, just to get that piece up. But then once once pulled up, they do clip right back in. So I'm just going to put all the clips back in the 2 fender screws. And Nisha, yes, I named my car, she is back together and she has all her eyes working again. So I have no idea how this boosted my manual score. Hopefully it's better than a 4. I think it was a 4 or a 5 before. I'll have to let my sister decide. And I'm going to go collapse on the couch and watch some TV after this, because I am wiped out. Have a good night.